Welcome. This lecture will be talking about rangelands as an introduction to the livestock grazing ecology class. So before we can begin really talking about livestock's interaction with ecological principles on rangeland, we really have got to start kind of with some baseline knowledge. So a good place to start is rangeland and what it is, because there's a lot of folks out there that have never even heard of it. And so the definition that we're going to use in this class is that rangeland is any extensive area that is occupied by native herbaceous and shrubby vegetation that is grazed by domestic or wild herbivores. And so these rangelands can look like temperate forests in high alpine areas. It can look like rolling grasslands of the Midwest, or it could look like semi-arid landscapes like in the Southwest. So rangelands are important for a lot of different reasons. So they are mostly covered by natural vegetation. Therefore, that vegetation actually provides a food source for livestock and wildlife species. That the soil that is found on rangelands is fertile for the most part, and it actually has quite a bit of biotic components to it. So there's always lots of microbes, fungi, bacteria that are going to be alive in that soil, which is a really important component to rangeland. And so that those soil components make rangeland really well suited for cultivating native vegetation. And so typically we don't say that rangelands are crop grounds. That's more for intensive agriculture, but the reality is, especially in the Midwest, that a lot of native rangeland has been changed over into croplands. And so rangeland and grassland ecosystem provide a variety of benefits to the environment. So it can provide land for farming, but that's not a big component that we're going to study in this class. It provides grazing and forage for livestock and native animals. One of the best things that rangeland does is it actually provides an area that contributes to watersheds. So here in California, 80% of the precipitation coming from either rain or snow falls on rangeland first and is collected into tributaries or storage systems like Lake Oroville or Lake Shasta. And so those watersheds are a really essential component and benefit that rangelands provide, especially here in the West as we start to see larger populations or larger human population growth. Rangelands also provide habitat for plants, insects, and animals. So, fun fact: insects, grasshoppers in our neck of the woods, actually are the largest forager on rangeland. So they eat more forage than livestock or wildlife species do. So rangelands are going to provide water for sustainable landscapes. They're also going to provide areas for recreational activities. So if you guys have ever been hiking or camping or other means of recreation in a national forest, congratulations, you have been on rangeland. And so those recreational activities are a really large societal benefit that rangelands can provide. Rangelands also provide renewable energy sources as well as mineral resources. We don't see that too much more here in California. There are some natural gas wells and some oil wells down south around like Bakersfield area and even along the coastline. But in Wyoming, New Mexico, Colorado, North Dakota, South Dakota, those areas are actually situated over natural gas wells. And so or natural gas shelves. And so we can see quite a bit of harvesting of those natural gas landscapes as well. And then more recently, the potential for rangelands to be areas of carbon sequestration has really become popular too. So this is an ecology based course. So it's important for us to just have a good understanding of what rangeland ecology is. And it's really the study of interactions. So we're going to look at organisms on rangeland and how they interact with population, communities, ecosystems. We're going to look at individual components such as soil, physiological ecology. And then our biggest component to this class is we're going to look at how livestock interact with each one of those. And I'll be honest with you, there's a lot of ways to mismanage livestock to cause degradation to rangeland. And so we're going to spend the next lecture talking about some of that history. And so we're still trying to recover from really poor management that took place because there just wasn't any knowledge of how to manage rangeland out here in the West. So a few statistics for you guys. So if we look at the land mass in the whole world, 47% of the Earth is actually considered rangeland or is classified as rangeland. There's some stats out there that estimate as high as 70, but 47 seems to be a pretty consistent number. Here in the U.S., of all the acreage in the U.S., 36% of that is classified as rangeland. If we look at the 19 western states, there are 53% of the 19 western states, 53% is classified as rangeland. If we look at rural states like Idaho and Nevada, those states are 48 and 80% rangeland. So what about California? And so California actually, when people think about California, they may think of beach and large populations in Hollywood, but we also have a lot of public lands in California. So we have many national and state parks, and we also have a lot of open country as well. So California actually has approximately 50% of the total acreage classified as rangeland. And so as we look out on a global basis, this map really shows how rangelands look throughout the world. And so we've got woodland savannas that cover a large portion of Africa, some of Asia and South America. We have a little bit of that in North America, but not a ton. Shrublands are really diverse, and we see shrublands pretty much appear on almost every continent. We see grasslands appear on every continent. They're actually the most productive type of rangeland. There's areas along the North America or in the northern hemisphere that are tundra based, and that tundra actually provides feed and resources for some like larger mammals like yaks and caribou. And then the areas that are not classified as rangeland are going to be in that brown color, and those are barren lands. And so we see some of those barren land areas kind of in northern Africa and through the Middle East as well. When we look at the United States, most of the rangeland is going to be out in the west areas. And this is a pretty detailed map. And you guys can spend some time kind of looking through this. But you can see there's a lot of different types of rangeland that are really intricately intermingled together. And that is really cool because it provides a lot of diversity. But it's also really challenging because it's hard to manage those areas as well. When we look at the U.S.'s percentage of federal ownership, so the federal government, like the Bureau of Land Management, U.S. Forest Service, National Park Service, Bureau of Indian Affairs, those are all federal programs that actually manage land in the U.S. And so their management territories are shown in the colors, and there's a key off to the left or off to the right there. So, but you can see that there's not a lot in the east. Most of the federal lands are managed by these organizations and government entities is actually in the west. And so this really shows that Nevada has is almost all federally owned. So it has approximately is 80% rangeland, and so there's going to be a lot of that acreage that is managed federally. And California also has quite a bit of federal lands as well. And most of our federal lands are actually U.S. Forest Service and National Park Service. The kind of the pink areas here, this is Bureau of Indian Affairs ground, and so there's a lot through the Southwest. And then the Department of Defense ground is shown in blue, and so there's a really large portion of New Mexico and North Texas that, West Texas, that is designated for DoD land. There's a lot in Arizona, and there's a lot in Nevada as well. So rangelands really provide a lot of benefits to society. So first and foremost, they serve as habitat for what some of our wild animals. So this is bison on a preserve in Oklahoma. They provide habitat and forage for domestic animals like cattle and sheep. They provide habitat for our other ruminant wildlife species like pronghorn antelope. They also provide natural resources. So this is a natural gas drilling site in Wyoming. And so they're in the middle of drilling here, so that's why there's so much equipment and stuff there. But eventually when they establish the well, all of this equipment will go away, and it will just be a wellhead that'll be fed into these systems over here. And so we see a lot of natural gas harvesting off of rangelands out here in the west. And then rangelands also provide habitat for for wildlife species that can be enjoyed by the public as well. So this is actually a wildlife preserve in Idaho. And it serves as a home to some of the species that are not necessarily considered domestic, but aren't necessarily considered wild. And so an example of that would be the wild horses. And we're going to talk quite a bit about wild horses because we actually have a pretty big issue with them here in northeastern California and Nevada. So some of the challenges that we see on rangeland, right now we're dealing with a lot of fire, right? So as of a day ago, this was the active fire map in the west, and so you can see that a good part of Northern California is on fire. And it's unfortunate because there's a lot of people in this state, but it's not unexpected. California is a Mediterranean climate, and fire is very much a part of our natural ecology, and we're going to dig more into that this semester as well. And then another challenge is activist groups. So one of the most vocal is actually the wild horse activist groups. They actually put pressure on the federal government by leading protests, suing the federal government to have their management ideals realized. And so the management of rangeland is held very tightly because there's a lot of outside forces that can control that management style. So it can come from weather, it can come from natural disasters, it can come from government policy, and it can come from activist groups, as well as a bunch of other areas as well. So rangeland management is, I think of it as this theory that really sets in the middle with all this other stuff going on around it. And those people that have to manage those lands have to deal with a lot of different things. So, our goals for this semester is to really master ecological principles of rangeland and look at livestock's role within each one of those principles. You guys are also going to have the opportunity to hear from leading researchers in the West and the Midwest in the field of rangeland science and management. And we're really going to spend a lot of time developing problem solving skills and establishing baseline knowledge for a lot of the major rangeland issues. So, lots of different things are going to happen this semester. Let's make it a good one.